Good evening and welcome to the My Choices broadcast. This session will last for around 60 minutes and will include a speaker presentation followed by a fantastic panel discussion and Q&A. This session will focus on employability skills, what employees are looking for, as well as the importance of good CV, writing a good CV and demonstrating your amazing skills at interviews. Questions for today's speakers can be submitted by the Q&A function on the right-hand side of your screen, and this will be open throughout the session. So please submit your questions as you think of them. I'm delighted to welcome our first speaker for this evening, Paul Thompson. Paul is the Education and Skills Manager with SEMLAP and is delighted to be speaking to you this afternoon. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much and good evening, everybody. This is our second broadcast, just helping young people with their preparations and career choices and going forwards, and just to see where the opportunities are. Just to explain a little bit about SEMLAP, we are responsible for the economic development within the area, and that's very much about listening to what employers' needs are, making people well informed about what those needs are, and what kind of skills they might require to kind of get the career of their choosing. So this broadcast in particular just looks very much in terms of what businesses are looking for, what people need, and in terms of employability and very much at first impressions as well. So the way that we actually do our work is through a number of different kind of platforms, and we listen to employers through a business engagement group, which is very much made up of the larger kind of business organisations that you may have heard of, like the Chamber of Commerce and the Federation of Small Businesses, CBI, organisations such as that. We also conduct research and consultation with businesses, and we produce a number of reports on different occupational groups and sectors. We run business surveys biannually, so every 2 years, to about 1,600 businesses. And we also look at job vacancy data, and we look at this weekly. So we keep analysis of what kind of jobs are in demand, and in particular, what kind of skills employers are looking for. So when we kind of run the business surveys, etc., the businesses claim they have some hard to fill vacancies, and the things that they cite generally most of the time as being the biggest issue is skills. It's usually number one. But it's not just skills, it's things like attitude, motivation, personality, experience and qualifications as well. And when we actually say, well, OK, you say skills, what do you mean by skills? Well, technical or practical skills comes up number one time and time again, as does job specific skills is always top of the list. Communication skills is another one that covers a whole host of different jobs and roles. So we said, OK, well, we needed a bit more information. So with the consultations that we did, we came up with a definition of what employability skills are. And we've kind of broken them down into kind of chunks, if you like. So the first are basic skills. Now, this is very much about maths and English, literacy and numeracy, and basic digital. I'll explain more about that in a moment. So it's being able to kind of understand basic maths, basic English. It's no more than that half the time, but it's kind of my understanding that, you know, they're used virtually everywhere, and they are that important. They are some of the key basic skills. Then we get on to attitudes and behaviours, and this is really about how hardworking you are and what personal qualities you may have. The most important by far is what we call core competencies. You may hear them called transferable skills, which is very true because they can be taken from one job to another and different occupations. They're sometimes referred to as soft skills, and to be honest with you, we don't like that. They're not soft, they're vital. They are absolutely essential. And the order that we've actually listed them are the frequency that they come up on different jobs. So communication being top, organisational skills, teamwork and collaboration, and digital literacy. And again, I'll explain a bit more about that in a second. Then we have technical and vocational skills. These are more directly related to the occupations or the job roles. And then we have qualifications. And I have to say, proportionally, when we talk to employers, they do proportion in those kind of size boxes. Now, that's not to say qualifications are not important. They are. They'll actually kind of get you to the job interview, and we'll show you how in a moment. But, you know, don't underestimate the importance of these core competencies, attitudes and behaviours. They are absolutely essential. They really are. So I mentioned digital skills, and this is by far one of the more important skills, and moving up the list very, very quickly. And by basic digital skills, we mean basically, can you turn a computer on and get to your bank account? I mean, it is that simple. And for most young people, that's not a challenge at all. However, what is proving to be more of a challenge is digital literacy. And this is really the use of Microsoft Office. So this is Microsoft Excel in particular, Microsoft Word. It also includes Microsoft Outlook. I should stress to you that Outlook is emails. Most businesses don't use phones and social media for communications internally. They still use emails, and business-to-business communication is predominantly done by email as well. And then we get into these specialist digital skills. Now, these are more related to specific kind of job roles. A lot of them are kind of revolved around computer programming, and it's kind of programming through to data analysis, some digital creativity as well, like graphic design, web design, gaming. And then you go into manufacturing, so computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. And one of the hottest topics out there, cybersecurity at the moment. Lots of opportunities within these areas. And it's interesting, when we did the research, something that kind of came up, virtually every business has got a requirement for digital skills. But when we looked at the specialist digital skills, it was only 1/3 of them that were actually used in specialist digital companies. The rest we used across more of the traditional sectors like engineering, manufacturing, business management, financial control. So again, you know, having those kind of skills gives you a lot of more opportunity in lots of different areas, and it is one of the true transferable skills out there as well. And some other jobs that you may not think use digital do. So certainly education, health, childcare, construction, they all need digital literacy. So one of the other issues that employers raised to us when they were trying to fill vacancies was the number of what they classed as unsuitable candidates and the quality of applicants. And when we kind of delved deeper as to what was kind of behind those comments, it always seemed to come back down to first impressions and the first 2 points of contact. And they are the curriculum vitae, the CV, and the cover letter. So this is the kind of letter or the email that goes with the CV when you're applying for a job. So if you look at the curriculum vitae, I mean, this really is an opportunity to kind of impress a potential employer by describing your skills, your qualities that you actually have, and showing the evidence that you've got for those. But there's some key things that employers told us that makes them want to read a CV. And that is really about keeping it simple, keeping it short, making sure it's easy to read. And one thing that came up time and time again was spelling. Make sure the spelling is correct, and make sure somebody kind of proofreads it. And there were some things that you don't need to do. You don't need to include a photograph or a date of birth. And again, one of the things that came out time and time again with young people as well was do not use text language or slang. You know, don't use clip art or emojis or anything like that within it. It is a professional document, so you should treat it as such. The other thing that came up, and this is quite an interesting one, was people were applying with generic CVs. They were sending the same CV for every single job. That's the completely wrong way to do things. You need to make sure you understand what the organisation does, how it does it, and why that you're applying to. And sort of great way of doing it is have a quick look at the company histories. They're usually on their websites, things like that, but have a look in the latest news stories, social media, things like that, to see what's actually going on. Make sure you read the job description as well, and the job advert, and relate whatever skills that you've got to actually that job description. It's important that you tailor each application to the job advert and the job role, and use all this information to inform the cover letter as well. So the key thing within the CV is actually demonstrating evidence of these kind of core competencies, and it's quite a challenge for young people, to be honest with you. But there are some ways that you can do this, and some great ones are things like work experience, part-time job, things like Duke of Edinburgh Awards, cadets, National Citizen Service, voluntary work, anything like that is fantastic to actually demonstrate the kind of skills and attributes that you might have. But there are also stuff within schools as well, you know, things like enterprise programs like Young Enterprise, music, drama, craft, arts, sport, anything like that, that you can actually demonstrate some of the kind of core competencies that businesses are looking for. And I mentioned the cover letter. It's a great way to kind of expand the description of your skills and your abilities relevant to the particular job description. It's important to get the tone of these letters right. So if you do know the person that you are actually applying to, use their name. Again, it is a formal document, so make sure it's on a professional basis. Again, no text language, no emojis or anything like that. Keep it formal, keep it fairly concise. 5 or 6 paragraphs generally will do. Don't make it too long. And it is so important. I cannot stress how important these documents are. We as businesses and organisations tend to get a lot of applicants for a job. I did hear one the other day that had 3,000 applicants. Trust me, they are not going to read all the CVs and all the cover letters. They will scan them very, very quickly. So first impressions are very, very important. So, you know, something like the example that we've got here, this is a bit too short. This is a bit too concise. It doesn't really expand it. It's probably going to get rejected. Something like this, that's taken the time and trouble to relate it to the actual job and actually kind of expanded on the person's skills and attributes, yeah, they're likely to proceed. That's the kind of thing that we're looking for. And it's also spelt correctly as well. A couple of things just to finish with. I mean, the thing really is to know your strengths and weaknesses, you know, and really highlight those. You know, if there's some things you're going to need to work at to develop some of these core competencies, then put yourself out there and give it a go. Make sure you gain the record of evidence of these employability skills, attributes and behaviours. You know, keep a separate little piece of paper, put it up on your bedroom wall, whatever, write on there as you gain these things and see what you got out of it. Make sure you tailor every application to the job role in the organisation and use the research to do that. And make sure you check the application before submission and get someone else to check it. I know it can be a little bit embarrassing sometimes for young people, but do it. It's worth its weight. We've got more information on our website, semnet.com. So fill your boots, have a look. It's at mainly all the labour market information stuff and some good resources there. And thank you very much for listening.
That's great. Thank you so much, Paul. We're going to jump straight into our panel discussion, if that's okay. And I'm going to come to you first, Marie. So first of all, I think it would be really helpful if you could, one, let our audience know a little bit about your own job, and just so they get to know you a little bit, what it is that you enjoy the most about it.
Okay, good evening everyone. Really nice to be part of the presentation this evening. So my name is Marie Jones. I'm a HR manager, human resources manager for Parker Hannifin. So we are a diverse manufacturing and engineering company. We're a US based company, but we've got quite a significant number of manufacturing plants in the UK, and also our UK head office, which is where I'm based, which is Hemel Hempstead, so not too far away. My role in HR is really, you know, about looking after the people in our organisation, just helping them to be the best they can be. Sometimes that's making difficult choices, and sometimes we have to have tough conversations in my role, but most of the role is very positive, and it's about really supporting and developing people. I think pretty what I enjoy most is that no one day is ever the same, and I can truly say that, and I think anyone else who works in that whole sort of people environment will probably say the same. I sit in my office and someone will come to the door and say, have you got a minute? And I have no idea what that person's going to say. And I think I love that challenge and that element of my role, that no 2 days are the same.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And then just thinking about the kind of wealth of experience you have as well, Marie, could you let our audience know what your view is on the key transferable and employability skills that our audience, who are, you know, largely Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5 pupils, could be developing right now for their futures?
Sure, and I think, really supportive of what Paul's just presented there. I think it is that balance between, we want to see that you're working hard and that you are able to sort of achieve your qualifications, but definitely more important are those, interpersonal people skills, that ability to be able to communicate. And it's not easy when you first set off in working life. Confidence comes with experience, but actually just that ability to be able to build relationships and talk to people. And I think that's becoming more challenging with particularly with the digitalization and social media. It's easy, we could spend a whole day without talking to a human being if we want to, because actually you can message, you can text, you can as I say, message on social media, but actually that ability to build a relationship is very important across many functional areas in business. And I think most of all is really that willingness to learn and that curiosity, to really find out more about the role you're doing or the project you're doing, and ask questions and be really curious about the world. And I think that will set you in, a good stead for any opportunities going forward.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And just coming to you, Julie, if that's okay, just reflecting on those great suggestions from Maria around relationship building, curiosity, and having a willingness to learn. Are these the kind of key transferable skills that you're looking for when you're hiring as well, or that you're interested in the next generation developing?
Yeah, 100%. I think that kind of willingness to learn and adaptability, certainly in the last, kind of 6 or 7 months, certainly from my perspective, adaptability has been absolutely key. And I think as well that kind of digital skills and the importance of those. So over the course of the last 7 or so months in particular, we've had to learn to use systems and digital systems like Microsoft Teams that we've never really used before within our organisation. So that being able to kind of change the direction that you're working in and to do that really quickly and to have that resilience to be able to do that confidently, but to not be afraid to ask questions if you're struggling with something, I think is also really important. I'm always looking for people that are just willing to be able to put their hands up and say, oh, do you know what, I'm not sure how to do this, can you help me? And I'd rather people did that than kind of struggle on alone.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think you're totally right with that. The challenges we've all seen in our professional environments over the past few months, working virtually, using Teams like we are now. And we will move on to actual virtual interviews later on in the session as well, and some top tips there for our audience perhaps. And Julie, what is one thing that you absolutely love about your job?
Oh, there's so many things. I think actually I'm really lucky because even though I work in a massive firm like KPMG, I get to work with a hugely diverse number of people across the entire firm because I work in corporate responsibility, so supporting our community work. We do a lot of work at KPMG to support young people in schools and communities across the entire of the UK. So I'm really lucky in that I get to work with a hugely diverse number of people across the entire of our firm. Everyone from our UK chair right through to kind of our apprentices that have just started out their careers.
That's fantastic. Sounds like such an exciting role. Thank you so much. And just moving to Verity, who's joining us from Travis Perkins PLC today. Verity, are there any other kind of transferable skills that you think teenagers today could be thinking about developing that will help them in their future careers? Verity, you're muted.
I knew I'd be the one to do that after talking about it earlier. So I think there's a real misconception that you need to be working in order to build these skill sets and build these transferable skills and employability skills, which absolutely isn't true. At Travis Perkins, we very much look at people's strengths, and how we assess that is, one, what are the things that you're really good at? But more importantly, number two, what are the things that you enjoy doing? Because history tells us if you enjoy doing it, you're going to give it your all and you're naturally going to be a lot better at it. So when you're putting yourself, when you're preparing for an interview, if you don't have masses of work experience, then make sure you're thinking about all the skills that you display in your personal life and your school life as well. So if, for example, when you're arranging things with a group of friends, you're the person that decides where you go, decides how much money you're going to spend, books it, collects everybody's money, that is showing me so many transferable skills. We're looking at communication, organisation, budgeting and money handling. And all of those skills will be really valuable to businesses like ours, Travis Perkins, and other industries as well. For us, we're very much a behaviours-led industry, so we want to know that you can communicate, you can build relationships, and like I say, you can prove that in lots of different areas of your life. It doesn't just have to be work experience. So if you're in a place where you're feeling worried because your work experience isn't that detailed on your CV, then please do think about all those other areas where you can really display those skills and really show an employer what you can bring to them.
That's great, thank you. And relationship building and that importance is something that a few of our panelists have brought up this evening. And do you have any advice for any of our audience who might be joining us who are particularly shy or nervous at starting to build relationships or even asking employers for work experience? Do you have any kind of top tips potentially for them to consider?
Yes, so I think as well there's always a misconception that grown-ups, as I refer to them, which should be myself now, but I still don't really feel like a grown-up, kind of have everything together and are really confident and aren't nervous about doing those things. Truth is, they probably do still feel those nerves. They're just well practiced in hiding them, and really well practiced in knowing how to go about it. The best way to think about it is the absolute worst thing that can happen is an employer says that they can't offer you work experience, or someone says they don't have the time to talk to you about their job role. Nothing worse than that is ever going to happen. So really make the most of your own network. So perhaps people in your family work in different industries, perhaps you have friends who have family members that work in industries that you're interested in. Just reach out, drop them a note, find out more about what they do and whether that's a career you might be interested in. And then think about businesses that are local to you, that are in the areas that, again, you're interested in, because you might think you're really interested in a career, but actually if you go and experience it, it might not be quite what you thought it would be, or not quite what you were looking for. So don't be afraid to kind of knock on those doors, ask them the question, and all of those experiences are going to really help build your skill set and get you prepared for a future career.
That's great, thank you. And finally, what's the one thing you like the most about your job at the moment, Verity?
So that's a really easy one. So I support all of our apprenticeship and graduate recruitment at Travis Perkins. And for me, the reason I get up in the morning and come to work is just seeing how quickly those individuals develop. So we have apprentices that are probably where you are now that join us really nervous, really anxious, not sure what this is going to mean for them or how well they're going to do. And when I check back in with them kind of even 6 weeks later, they're completely different people. They've taken it all under their wing. They're absolutely striving, and seeing that development and being a part of that with them, I'm really passionate about and really kind of gives me that proud to be a part of the Travis Perkins apprenticeship team feeling.
That's fantastic, thank you. And we're just going to move to Annie now, and Annie's joining us from Milton Keynes College. Annie, it'd be really helpful if you could let our audience know if you have any other views or comments on those employability and transferable skills that our kind of audience members can be thinking about developing right now for their future.
Sure, absolutely. We may pick this up later on in the session, but before we went live, I was talking to Paul about how this information had kind of got out to the people that are attending this evening, and we talked about actually how the virtual environment in which we're all living now is actually opening up more opportunities. So perhaps some of you are joining tonight because it's a virtual event rather than actually having to come in or go somewhere or whatever. And I think work experience actually can be provided in that way too. Certainly we started thinking about that at the college and certainly in my team. And I think if you are looking to talk to people and actually you're asking them for a work experience, they might feel daunted about trying to provide that to you. But actually if you ask them, can I chat to you about your role or what you do or what the function or what the team does, and actually that's an hour kind of discussion, then actually you can discover huge amounts. And generally I've found when I've asked people that in my role, they are really happy to talk through and give you some ideas and give you the intel on what they do on a day-to-day basis. So again, that might be an easier step than actually sort of going into work or trying to negotiate a shadowing kind of opportunity. Think about the conversations, think about, as somebody said earlier, the people in your network, friends, family, and actually just a conversation about what they show an interest in what somebody does. And it's amazing how much you can glean just from those really good conversations.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Annie. And we're just going to move to Kevin, who's joining us from Wilson Brown Solicitors as well. Kevin, welcome to our wonderful broadcast this afternoon. It'd be really great if you could let us know what are the kind of transferable skills that you developed in your career that have really helped you be successful?
Thank you. Hi everybody, pleasure to have the chance to talk. The key theme that I wanted to get across tonight really was that you don't have to decide now what you do for the rest of your life. And the question ties into that, because the first job I had was store security, and I worked as a security guard, milkman, worked in a bar, and I was really good when I worked in a carpet shop. Yes, now I'm a lawyer, don't hold that against me. The thing that ties through all of that is people. And, you know, I really liked what Verity had to say. It's all about people. And you can have all the qualifications you want and go through any course you want, but it's with, get on with, understand, talk to, but more, then you're going to struggle. It's that ability, I think. Positions of responsibility come with time. Certainly for me, the big thing that comes with this is dealing with people.
That's great.
Job start you off with that. Absolutely.
I think people are so important, and that's kind of a way to end this talking around transferability and skills. And Tally, I know we haven't come to you just yet, and it'd be really great if we can move on to the next session here with you, Tally, where we're reflecting on how our audience can draft their best possible CV. And I think that would be really exciting for us to cover. And so do you have any top tips for our kind of audience who might be thinking about writing their first CV even, and what they should be including or thinking about there?
Yeah, so as we're recruiters and career coaches, so as recruiters, we probably see 1,000 CVs a week. So yes, it's really important, as Paul mentioned earlier, that you're getting your skills and your work experience and your qualifications on there. But equally, this is the best. This piece of paper as a document to market the best version of yourself. And it's really important that you showcase your personality across in that. So having a personal profile on there and your hobbies and interests are two key areas that I look at when I'm recruiting, because if it's up against two people who've got the same skills and experiences, it's going to come down to team fit and personality within that business. If you're showcasing that you've got these skills, we want to see the evidence from it. So rather than just putting I'm a proactive team player in your personal profile, that comes up so much, and yes, it's great, but it's a little bit boring. Let's showcase your personality across. So if you like spreadsheets, start off that profile saying I love Excel or I love spreadsheets. It just gets your personality across a bit more. Equally, just evidence it. So when you've given yourself a skill, just say my strongest asset is, and this is proven through, and give an example. So if you're captain in the school football team, then that's a really good example of that. Likewise with your hobbies and interests, don't just list and bullet point them. If you're passionate about something, just give a little bit of a sentence about it. So if you enjoy baking, what's your favourite recipe that you're trying to perfect at the moment? It just gets that little bit of extra personality across, and that's something that I think definitely for the youngsters, because they're not going to have a really full CV at the moment. So if they can showcase their personality, then the higher reading that is really going to get a real good feel for them at the end of it.
That's fantastic, thank you. And I've just received a question from one of our students who've asked, they've said, I have autism. Is this something that I should mention in a job application or in an interview? And do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Obviously, that's down to the discretion of the person talking. If you use it to your strengths, so if you're comfortable talking about it and you can use previous experiences of how it's helped you in the past, then by all means pop it in there, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And we're just going to move back to Marie, if that's okay, because Marie, I imagine you see quite a lot of CVs in your role, and it'd be really interesting to know what it is that you're looking for that helps CV stand out from your perspective.
Sure, I don't think it's much different to what we've already talked about. I think it is that, yeah, the balance of your qualifications, the skills, but personalising those as well, so that we can see, you know, how you're going to stand out. I guess that education leavers, whether that's school, college, university, you're potentially having quite similar CVs because, you know, there may be 200 people or all have done the same course. So actually that qualification part is going to be the same. So how do you get to stand out? And I think it's, you know, just really making sure you're using all of that experience. But, you know, don't think that all that experience maybe not relevant. If I'm applying for an apprenticeship in engineering, just because I worked in McDonald's, I'm going to leave that off my CV because it's not relevant. Well, it absolutely is, because again, it's back to teamwork and communication and being able to turn up on time and all those really key things. One thing I would say is you're right, you know, CVs, they can be sometimes a tiny bit boring if you see them over and over again. So it's how do you make yours just look that bit more interesting? We can, you know, you talked about at the start, you know, if someone's doing their very first CV, there are hundreds of templates available on the internet, but just be careful, you know, don't just put your name at the top and your course and think that's enough to use the template, because we do see them over and over again. And I think, you know, yes, use the layout for a bit of help if you're not sure, but just make sure you tailor it to your own personality, your own skills. And I think also we talked to, I think, Paul in his first presentation, you know, leave off the emojis and the clip art. If you're going for a role in graphic design, yes, you might want to showcase a little bit more what you can do, but actually, you know, for anything else, just keep it simple, keep it brief, don't pad it out unnecessarily, but just really keep those key points about who you are. And you know, by reading the CV, hopefully we can just get a little bit of a picture and a flavour on who you are, and don't be afraid to be yourself and try and get that personality across.
That's great, thank you. I think it's so important to include, as you said, that personality, so the hiring manager gets a feel for who you are and your interest in the role as well. And have there ever been any CVs that have really stood out to you as something that's been a really stellar move or something that's really caught your attention?
I think the ones that stick out are often for bad reasons, so I perhaps won't go through those right now. But I think it's, you know, it's where perhaps someone's taken a little bit of a risk and really thought about how they can, you know, bring the skills that they've got or the passion for the role, and you know, they might not have any experience, and the point at which you all are now, you know, your experience is going to be somewhat limited. But I think it's those CVs that just really, you know, take a little bit of a punt and really just, you know, just have a gamble and think, you know, yeah, I have got those skills. And I always try and get across to people, don't always worry about what you haven't got, focus on what you have got. And I think it was it Verity at the beginning talking about, you know, that's the strengths, focus on your strengths. And absolutely, you know, we can talk ourselves out of applying for jobs, because there might be a list of 10 key criteria and you think, actually I've got 8 of them, but there's 2 missing, so I won't apply. Well, forget the 2, you know, focus on the 8 things that you have got, or the positives that you have got, and really push those through in your CV and showcase how you can, you know, get those points across.
That's fantastic, thank you. And I think we'll just move to Verity, if that's okay, and just reflecting on CVs and that kind of recruitment and application process that candidates go through. I think a key part of that is often the covering letter. And do you have any kind of top tips for writing an effective covering letter that is, you know, often something that can trip people up, I think, in an application process?
Yeah, so I think some of this will echo what Paul went through earlier. One of the most important things for your cover letter is to make sure it's not generic. When I open a cover letter, what I'm really looking for is that the candidate has properly read the job profile and what we're looking for, and understands what our business is, what we do, who our customers are and what we deal with. The best thing to do in that cover letter is have a look at that job advert, have a look at all of the things that they are asking for. So they might be saying, we want someone with a great attention to detail, who is a good communicator, who can use things like Microsoft Office applications. And then when you write your cover letter, just tick off those things that they're looking for. So say, look, I've got these skills and this is where I've used them. So it's almost an advertisement for yourself. So they've put out the job advert and you're telling them why you're the perfect person for the role. So it's not enough for you to just say, this is who I am, this is where I went to school, these are my grades, this is what I'm looking for. Really pick off those skills and say, look, I've got all of these skills, I'm the right candidate for you, I'm the person that that you want to see, and it will make that recruiter want to read more, read through your CV, and hopefully progress you on to that next stage.
That's fab, thank you. We did just receive a question from one of our audience members who asked, what do employers look at first, the CV or the covering letter?
I think it will completely vary on who you get, who looks at your CV. Everyone has a very different approach. Personally, I will look at a CV first, just because it's much easier to pull out that information. So what Paul was talking about earlier, where you receive hundreds of applications for one role, it takes a lot of time to read 100 cover letters and give them the time you need to pick out that detail. So I will quickly load the CV, quickly scan it and see if I'm finding those things that I want for the job role. And if it's looking good, I'll read that cover letter to help me make my decision. So CV first, cover letter for me. Some people might be the other way around.
Fantastic, thank you. And Annie, just reflecting on your kind of expertise in recruitment and applications, of course, some of our students might be required to fill out an actual application form as opposed to presenting a CV to an employer. And are there any different things that our audience should be considering about application forms in and of themselves?
Yeah, application forms generally require a lot more work, I find, and often depending on which firm you go for, you'll often see that recruiters will say put a CV in because they recognise that actually a candidate who's filling in an application form is undertaking quite a commitment. I think you have to understand what happens to the application form once you've done it. It's often we use application forms generally at Milton Keynes College because actually what happens is they're redacted. They're sent through as in something called a blind shortlisting to the hiring manager, and what that means is actually all of the kind of sensitive data is sort of taken off so that we can have a really fair shortlisting, and that's really important from an equality, diversity and inclusion point of view. So I think it's worth sort of understanding some of the mechanisms that are going on behind, but there's lots of stuff you can, I'm going to say, cut and paste into an application form. So the work that you've done on your CV, anything that you've done on your covering letter, you can take sections of that and actually put it in as long as it's relevant. You have to actually really connect to each question that's being asked, and also sort of think a little bit behind, why is that question being asked? What information are they looking there? Where's that likely to end up? So it's really an organisation, I think, trying to level the playing field. If they've got an application process, they're really trying to kind of make sure that all candidates have a really good shot and a fair shot and an equal shot in terms of the information they're supplying. So they're there for a good reason. Sometimes they can be quite a big undertaking, and actually will tell you quite a lot about the organisation itself, I would say. So, you know, that's the other thing I'd say. Remember, this application process is a two-way thing. So actually, if you find out about an organisation and the experience of actually applying for them, that tells you quite a lot actually about what they are as an employer, I would say. But yes, do bear in mind, recruiters are dealing with lots of applications and probably more than they have done in the past right now, big volumes.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And Julie, just reflecting on the kind of students applying for roles with CVs and then moving on to application forms, I think one of our students here has asked a question around any tips for gaining work experience next year, which is an interesting question. So I guess outside of official application forms, do you have any insights or tips as to how young people could attempt to secure work experience at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of kind of things that you might do, and it almost depends on the kind of sector and the kind of business or organisation you're thinking about working for. So thinking about kind of big firms like KPMG, we run kind of annual work experience for young people that are in sixth form, along with all of the other kind of big four firms. So EY, Deloitte, all of the big professional services firms do that. So if you're interested in working for a large firm, I'd recommend kind of having a look at some of the big firms' websites to see what kind of work experience opportunities that they offer. And there's normally an application process you have to go through to join those, which is obviously good practice in terms of getting to kind of the employment side of things as well. And I think also it's kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about, are there ways that you could potentially use your own contacts? Are there people that you know within your family or in your friendship network who might be able to help you with some work experience? or if there's a particular kind of sector that you're really interested in, finding out who are the local businesses to me that might be able to offer work experience, and looking at their websites, or even just kind of dropping them a line to ask them if there's something out there. I think we're really lucky now in that there's a lot more information to be able to find out what kind of work experience opportunities are out there for employers. I mean, certainly when I was kind of looking for work experience, it was, there wasn't the internet, so I didn't have that opportunity to be able to kind of gain that information myself as easily. But yeah, I think do your research, look at the different opportunities that are out there, and draw on people that you know and your friends as much as you can too.
Fantastic, thank you. I think in our conversation yesterday evening, one of our speakers said proactivity is something that can be really helpful in securing work experience and kind of showing your interest in a sector or in a role and an organisation. And Kevin, just on that note, it'd be really interesting to get your thoughts on, if you were approached by students or your organisation were for work experience, what would make a session, kind of an email, stand out to you, I guess, if someone was asking for work experience?
So one of my roles is also as president at the Northamptonshire Chamber of Commerce, and they represent about a third of the workforce. So my answer is a bit from what they've told me, and I've say it's the same as the covering letter. It's the targeted approach. It's not an email that says, "Hello, have you got any work experience?" It's 2 or 3 paragraphs that someone has gone to the effort to search your firm. You have to be, personally, or whoever the email is to. It also should be addressed to that person that you know to, if it is direct to a person. It's show me that you've taken the time to do this. I remember when I was a student, I had probably 40 photocopied letters that I'd handwritten done, really awful lined paper, and I went and showed my dad and I said, I'm ready to send my CV off on spec now, and he had an absolute fit, and he was right to, because it was a mess. My writing is awful, as is any lawyer's, but even then it was bad. I hadn't really tried, and he said, that's just all going to end up in the bin. I'd rather you did 2 neat targeted letters. That's right, and it's the same now, just on email. So research the firm, the sector, and why are you interested in it?
Fantastic, that's great advice, thank you so much. And just kind of moving on from that kind of application process overall and moving to Tally, thinking about students who've made applications, they've been successful in engaging an employer in work experience or in a job role, and they've been invited to an interview, that ever daunting prospect. I guess what would be your first top tip or advice for young people preparing for their first potential interview in the world of work?
Obviously the world of interviews has changed since March, and we're going through a whole new norm of Zoom interviews at the moment. So that's a whole new world for everybody, and it's really hard to build that relationship with the person that's interviewing via Zoom, because you really struggle to make the eye contact. The camera's not where you want it to be. But my first would always, and I've always got a lasting impression, we do mock interviews with lots of schools, and the kids get told that we're coming in and who we are. They literally just get our name and the company. And one year we had back-to-back interviews, 6. We had 6 each, me and my colleague, and one of hers hadn't turned up, so she took one of my students, and the girl walked in and she looked like she'd seen a ghost, and my colleague Charlotte went, "Are you okay? Are you poorly?" And she was like, "You don't look like your profile picture." And Charlotte went, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I've researched you on LinkedIn and you're not Tally." And that was automatically brownie points from Charlotte's perspective, because she'd done her homework. So for me, ask who's interviewing you. If you can go and do your research and find out who it is interviewing you, look them up on LinkedIn, go on the company website. Lots of company profiles have meet the team pages now. And if you can find a natural, happy starting point for conversation, you might have a similar interest, you might know that they follow a particular sports team. That will just, interviews are scary at the best of times, but if you've got that natural start a conversation, then you naturally, or you know what the person's looking like when you go in and meet them, then you've already got through the door and your nerves are a lot calmer. So that would be my top tip.
That's fantastic, thank you. And I'm going to ask what seems like an odd question, but it has been posed by several students in events that I've been involved in. In a normal interview, you would usually go and shake your interviewer's hand or say hello. So one of our students in the past has asked, for a virtual interview, should I wave at the camera or should I not? Do you have any thoughts on that, Tally?
We're not really fans of waving at a camera, but it's entirely up to you. I guess, yeah, it's a softener, isn't it? Saying hi or nice to virtually meet you as a joke or something. But I don't know, I'm not really a hand waver, but it's entirely up to you.
Fantastic, thank you. Annie, what are your thoughts on the waving at the start of a virtual interview? Do you have any preference there?
It wouldn't put me off if somebody was being natural and whatever. I have to say, and you've probably seen me do this already, I'm a bit of a thumbs up person, because often you're trying to connect with people and show that you're saying without kind of breaking the flow of the conversation. So I think all bets are off with regards to rules. No unfortunate personal habits on display, but I think actually, you know, waving at the camera, engaging, whatever makes you feel most natural and makes you able to connect with the person who's speaking to you, because it is unnatural when you're just speaking to somebody new. We're all getting better at it though, aren't we? So yeah, I don't mind a wave, even the two-hand wave. That's good for me.
Fantastic, thank you. And just thinking about the preparation that an interviewee might want to undertake before they go into an interview, do you have any top tips and advice? I know Tally already mentioned seeing if you can make a connection with your interviewer. Are there any other things that you would expect a candidate to go through at all?
Is that to me?
Yes.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I was really pleased that Tally mentioned LinkedIn. I've got some teenage children myself, and I don't think LinkedIn is on the normal spectrum of some of the social media that's most looked at, but it's where employers are, for sure. It's where employers are. So I think it's good to start early, actually getting a LinkedIn profile. You can go quite gently. You don't have to put loads there, but start engaging, having a look and seeing some of the networks that build up on LinkedIn. They're powerful. They're really powerful. And I would say, again, it's not the most up-to-date social media, but I still think Twitter's really good. You can gently, following some hashtags, following some companies that you're interested in, get a real sense of what it's like maybe working there. And lots of companies now are really putting their profiles out there, and you can get a really, really good sense of that. So that would be my suggestion, is do your research and do use LinkedIn. Like I say, you might think, oh no, that's not, but it's amazing what's out there, and also discussion documents, just real good little snippets of things, and you can really get a sense of all the different kind of connections, and it's a great way for building your network. You may not get headhunted off of LinkedIn for a few years yet, but it's really worth building your profile there.
That's fantastic, thank you. And Julie, just thinking about your role and your amazing expertise and experiences as well, have you had any really great interviews that have stood out to you? And in particular, one of our students has asked around the questions that they should ask an employer in an interview.
Oh, questions I should ask me. I think for me, and when I'm interviewing someone, I see that as kind of an opportunity to have a conversation, to get to know the person and to find out a little bit more about them, because it's all an interview is about finding out whether that person would be the right fit for the job, you know, based on kind of the initial information you've had about them, and how, you know, you'd be able to work with them and learning a little bit more about them. I think some of the best kind of questions that I've been asked when interviewing people, I once got asked by somebody why they should take the job if we offered it to them, which I thought was a really interesting question, because they were effectively asking me to sell the organisation that I was working with and the job that they were interviewing for. And I thought that was quite a nice a question for them to ask, because it just kind of, it made me think a little bit about, you know, what would I tell a person who's really good about working for where I work. So yeah, I think that's a good one. And I guess kind of that showing an interest in finding out a little bit more about what the company or organisation does that you're interviewing for. Like if there's things you've read about on the website that you're interested in, you want to know a bit more about, then by all means ask for more information about that, and, you know, and kind of to learn a little bit more about what the company does. I think for me, having someone that I'm interviewing want to know more and be really interested in the company is something that's really important.
Fantastic. I think that's great advice. Researching the employer, their work, what they could be thinking about in the future, and also hopefully posing some difficult questions to the interviewer as well, which I think is a great idea. And Verity, of course, you will have seen and been involved in recruitment and seen quite a lot of applications and been involved in interviews as well. And are there any kind of standout practices that really, I guess, demonstrate to you how great a candidate could be for a role?
Yeah, and I think the same as most of the answers this evening, it all comes down to really good preparation. So it's really important to remember that an interview.
Oh, Verity, you're muted.
Oh, I did unmute myself. I don't know what happened there. So yeah, I think it echoes some of the answers that we gave earlier. So it all comes down to really great preparation for the interview. It's really important to remember that the interview is not there to trick you. It is there for the employer to make sure that you're a good fit for the role, and equally for you to make sure that it's something that you want and something that you want to kind of start your career in. When you're preparing, ask the recruiter for a job description if you don't already have it, and that job description will outline the skills and strengths and experience that they are looking for. So a really great way to prepare is to make a list of all those key things they're looking for and think about examples of where you've shown that particular skill and have those ready in your head. So think of kind of 10 great skills that you have and 10 examples of where you've used those skills. Then when you get asked that question in an interview, you'll already have those examples prepared. You just have to flip through a bit of a kind of mental filing cabinet, pull out the right example, and you'll be ready to talk about it and ready to tell that employer all about it. Echoing the end, so when that interviewer says, do you have any questions for me? That is your opportunity to really show your interest and show your engagement with the role. When people tell me they have no questions, it always makes me feel a little bit disappointed. It makes me feel like they don't really want the job. They don't want to find out more about what a typical day looks like. So make sure you've got a few questions ready. Ask them what they enjoy about working in that business. Perhaps ask them what they would expect you to be achieving within your first 3 months, first 6 months, first 9 months. Really show that engagement. You can also use that opportunity. So if you've thought of some really great examples of where you've shown really strong skill sets and the questions you've been asked in the interview haven't given you the chance to talk about them, use that final little chance to say, oh, I actually wanted to tell you about this and I didn't get a chance to in the interview, and then tell them about those examples. Really make yourself shine and give yourself that opportunity.
That's fantastic, and I love that idea of showing curiosity in the questions that you ask an employer as well. Almost kind of curiosity feeding through. I know, Julie, you mentioned this earlier in terms of those transferable skills and how young people can prepare for their future, and curiosity seems to be something that's feeding through the whole process, which is really exciting. And we only have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask our audience to keep their questions coming into us. But while we have you, Verity, one of our students here has asked, should I bring a notebook with questions to an interview? Is that okay to do?
That's absolutely fine. So when people come in with notebooks, my organisation little head gets really excited. I think they've obviously prepared a lot for this interview. They're ready to go. Let's see what they have. Make sure you aren't depending too much on your notebook though. So I've seen where people have written down examples and then when you ask them the question, they're kind of frantically trying to flip through and being a little bit too reliant. But absolutely, as a prompt to remind you of those questions that you've prepared, take it along with you. It shows kind of really great initiative.
That's fab, thank you. And just Marie, coming to you for our final question for you, if that's okay. Is there anything that you think our audiences can do to kind of prepare or practice for an interview? Should they be trying to practice with their family members or even with friends in terms of answering questions they might get asked?
Absolutely. I think, the more practice you can get, the better it is. I know many of us, support our schools in offering mock interviews, and, via your school, please get in touch because I'm sure we'd all be happy to help out as much as we can. But definitely, use your teachers, your family, your friends, share experiences. If you've been for an interview and it did go your way or it didn't go your way, then share that with perhaps some of your friends who are going through the same. Have a little debrief after afterwards to say, well, God, I got asked this question, I had no idea what to say. What would you have said in that situation? You know, ask whatever, you know, professionals you come across on a daily basis, just try to you know, re-go over that interview, think, what could I do better for next time, or what answers did I struggle and feel like I was sort of starting to stutter and I hadn't got an answer ready. And again, I think it was Verity there just saying, you know, think about some examples to go in with an interview. Absolutely, you know, really important. You'll never be able to guess what questions are going to be asked of you. Yes, you could look at the job description and the criteria for the role, but you can't, you know, we're not mind readers. We don't know what that interview is going to ask. So really just arm yourself with, you know, 5 or 6 really good examples and just think, what have I done well? What have I achieved in the last year? Think of a couple of school-based, college-based answers, you know, a couple of work experience, a couple of personal life. You know, quite often it can be out of a challenging situation. If you've, you know, supported a friend go through a difficult period of their life, you know, it doesn't always have to be about these hard business skills. You know, it's again showing your personality. So really think, you know, just have yourself a few examples, and then you know, it could be where you help somebody in the street carry their shopping home because you saw they were struggling, and then if you get asked a question about communication or, you know, supporting others or going above and beyond, you know, you've got these little examples with you that you can tap back into, and I think that's really important, because then they'll be more practiced and they'll roll off the tongue rather than thinking, oh, I've got to demonstrate my communication ability, how do I do that? Whereas if you've got this little kit bag of answers, I think that'll help you out.
I think that's fantastic and such wonderful advice. Thank you so much. And Julie, just finally, do you have any kind of final top tips or words of advice for our audience today?
I think everything that's been said today, just kind of that, you know, preparing yourself and almost being ready for anything. And, you know, I think another thing is always not to be scared to ask an interviewer to kind of clarify what they mean. Like if you're asked a question and you're not sure what they mean, ask them to say it again, kind of be like, oh, and have that confidence to be able to do that. I'd much rather someone ask me to clarify what I'm asking them than them try and ramble through an answer and not really get to a real answer. So I think it's just having that confidence to know that in an interview, no one's trying to trick you. It's about having that conversation and learning a bit more about you, and treating it as that conversation.
Fantastic, thank you. And Kevin, any final words of wisdom for you for our audience this evening?
I don't know about wisdom, but one thing I would say is, look, if you go for a job and you don't get it, you didn't have it before, so you haven't lost anything. What you've gained is experience. And like my list of weird and wonderful jobs before, all experience is relevant and it will all work out in the end. Just give it a go. I've had some great advice. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it. The thing is to put yourself forward, because, you know, if you don't get it, it wasn't right. But follow the advice you've had and it will work out. And not everything is forever. You don't have to decide your life now. You know, just relax a little bit about it. It'll work out.
That's fantastic. I love that advice. You don't have to have everything decided right now. I think I could say that to myself, to be honest. And Tally, do you have any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to share with our audience today? Tally, you're muted.
Sorry. Just to remember that your CV is a working document. It's never going to be finished. All of ours are probably still working now. And just keep it in that bottom drawer at home, so that when new skills or qualities or experience is gained, go and add it onto your CV, because when it comes to applying for your first job or a new job, it's not, you've got the bones of it to get you started, and it's not going to be pulling from memory what you can remember. So yeah, just remember it's a working document. Ours are all still very much open and working, and just keep that going. But yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, that's such great advice, and it's so true. If you keep updating the CV as you go through your career, you don't have to redo it every time you're thinking of a change. and Annie, finally, do you have any comments at all for our audience that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would just say to this particular audience, actually, you may not have experience, but what you have really got in complete volumes is learnability. I'm not even sure that's a word, but you have the capacity, really good capacity to learn, unlearn, learn again, and you can talk to that all day because that's what you've been doing. You've been learning things, different things, and actually that is a lifelong skill that all of us, I'm sure all of us in our careers are continuing. We've got to learn, you keep learning, you keep learning. So your ability to demonstrate that is really good. So use that. Think about actually the examples, your learning style, how you like to learn, things that you found difficult, things that you've overcome. That's all really good experience and will be of value to you throughout your career, and particularly so at the beginning.
Fantastic, thank you. And Verity, I think you have the final comments of this evening. Do you have any tips or advice that you haven't had the chance to share with our audience yet that you'd like to?
Pressure's on with the closing comments. So I think I'd absolutely echo what everyone else has said. There's been some great speakers this evening. Take their advice on board, take that forward with you. Be inquisitive, ask lots of questions of everybody that you possibly can, and probably really echoing the advice around your decisions now don't define your entire future. So don't be afraid to try things out. What is the worst that could possibly happen? You might find a career you love. At worst possible instance, you find something you don't enjoy and you know that you want to steer away from that and try something else in the future.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And a huge thank you to all of our panelists and audience for joining us today. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of our session this evening. A huge thank you to Paul and the SEMLEP team for helping bring this session together, and we could all give a virtual round of applause to our fantastic panelists. That would be much appreciated. We do have another session tomorrow looking at pathways and helping you decide what career route you might want to take, so we hope you can join us there. Have a great evening, everyone.